What, 42?
I don't know.
The meaning of life.
Memes.
Look, I've been playing Dungeons 3. I can't help it at this point.
I don't understand.
So effectively, in the void, after Dungeon Keeper died, they decided let's just make clones. Like a bunch of developers who love Dungeon Keeper. Like,
wait, why did Dungeon Keeper die?
EA has never actually felt like making a proper follow-up, just a shitty cash grab mobile game.
Oh.
Yeah. And so Dungeon Keeper was this really popular game where you were effectively an evil overlord and you had a dungeon you were supposed to keep it from being invaded.
Oh, that's why I've been acting maniacal and evil lately.
Yeah.
So there you go.
In like overhearing him just as I'm cooking or doing something, he's like, I must assemble my zombies in my naga. It's just okay.
That sounds like Dungeon Keeper.
Yeah, and so effectively, in the void of no Dungeon Keeper, there were several attempts to make a proper successor. And so there's the Dungeon series, which just had its third game release yesterday. There was War for the Overworld, which is kind of the more indie version, which was pretty good, but had its own issues. And then there was the Overlord games, which I think have since died, because they were... I think the first one was good, and the second one was awful. Yeah. And that more or less spelled the end of it. Maybe they tried for a third, but I don't know.
I don't think the Overlord games were ever Dungeon Keeper games either. Those were Pikmin games.
Oh, were they?
That was evil
heard them
Pikmin.
Compared. Okay. But I guess the Dungeons games kind of sit between Overlord and Dungeon Keeper, because there's like a overworld Warcraft 3 style gameplay where you're running around with a horde of monsters and taking out objectives there, because otherwise it's kind of hard to just have like dungeon defense be your goal, because after a while you're just like, what do we do?
Mission accomplished. Dungeon defended.
Yeah, you have defended the dungeon. And honestly, I actually find myself wishing for that, because there has yet to be a single mission where they just tell me, defend your dungeon. It's always been like, go kill this racist dwarf who abuses like dark elves or whatever. And
Wait,
I'm like,
so
okay.
you're not evil?
No, very evil. Just slightly ambiguous, because evil is, or good is also dicks. It's like Farquaad. Everybody is Farquaad.
Wait, what?
It's like he's lawful neutral. He's not quite lawful evil, but he is also evil.
It's very much evil. I'm burning whole towns to the ground and stuff like that. But like the good guys are like torturing people and like killing people that are just dark elves or whatever.
Yep.
Hasn't there always been the story of...
Yeah, pretty much.
Typically, villainous race is pigeonholed into one role, but they're actually not as bad as they are. And
no, they're as bad as they are. It's just good. It's just also
turn
bad.
Around so that the people that are fighting for good and righteousness
that
are
would
actually
be
oppressive.
That would be if the storytelling actually gave a shit. But this game kind of exists to have decently fun gameplay and to jam pack as many memes and references in as possible.
Memes?
There
yeah.
So
I was
instead
wondering
of writing,
I was
they just
wondering
use
what the tangential relationship was here.
Oh.
Yeah. So
This conversation started with 42, and I'm like, we're gonna get to it eventually, I hope.
Yep.
Yeah. So effectively, they hired the narrator from Stanley Parable, and they're like, okay, here's your script. It's like 50% memes, and the other 50% is references. Good luck. Okay,
Yay.
I guess maybe it's like 33% plot somewhere in there too.
Apparently, off on my computer. Off.
Oh, whoops.
Oh, that explains that.
Put it into...
That's why I was probably talking over people and didn't even realize it.
We didn't notice.
So
it's okay.
I think within the first 20 to 30 minutes of the game, the narrator describes the main female character doing a kamehameha into the sky, but the execution was just so cringeworthy, you have to groan at it. And that's pretty much the entire game. It's not bad, but it's one of those where you're like, no, it's bad. It's so bad, you get used to it. It's like the Stockholm Syndrome of bad humor. It's like Paul Blart Mall Cop, kind of.
Oh.
Yeah. I actually rather like the game just because it's fun. I haven't played an RTS in a while, and this is one of those where you can just chuck hordes of monsters at things and destroy things.
All Blart, Mall Cop, RTS.
We went over in our World of Final Fantasy podcast about how I can't handle a game that just spams you with bad jokes and just is relentless about it.
I guess I'm in the week of stupid and dumb. You know, Hat in Time, Dungeons 3, Holy Potatoes 3. And there's one other game that I'm totally forgetting right now, but I'm just being inundated with games with
I watched you play
humor.
Potatoes for about 30 seconds, and it was
It's
like
awful.
it was Loki was making
Terrible as
hashtag
in
jokes, and I'm
punny
like,
or
I'm done.
Terrible as in
I'm out.
rude?
It's
What do you think of that game? Because I played it and I didn't
I'm
really
hearing
like it very
something, but
much.
I don't know, Shell. I don't know what you're hearing. Which Holy Potatoes did
The
you play,
newest one.
Bird?
I
Okay,
played
so what the hell?
The Go to Hell one or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it reminds me of Cook Serve Delicious, but without the stress currently. Because, you know, it's kind of the same thing. Here's your customer. Here's what they want. Give it to them. Oh, you didn't do it fast enough. Well, they don't like you now and they leave and you lose.
Mhm.
And so I kind of appreciate that. Mainly, I think I just appreciate their games because they're very low brain power.
Yeah.
I can just kind of load them up, yuck for a little while, and then move on. They're not very long. If they were... Holy Potatoes Weapon Shop was probably the best, mainly just because they actually had some depth of mechanics. The second one was decent, but it outstayed its welcome because it never changed anything. And it didn't really, like, vertically scale. And I can't really say much about this one because I've only played about an hour and 20 minutes. But it seems like it's probably going to be in the same vein of, you know, I'll play for about 10 episodes and then I'll be done and I never have to think about it again. And I don't know, somewhere along the way I actually have grown to kind of appreciate that. Because that just means another series that I can put away and not have to worry about again. Okay.
Should we pause for technical support?
No,
We
it
might
turns
as well.
out that I just had to replug my audio cable in through both jacks, like the one that goes into my headphones and the one that goes into the computer.
Okay.
Sorry.
Alrighty. Well, I guess we
It
don't need
could've-
to pause.
It could have just twisted around. You know how that works?
Yeah.
Where sometimes it either cuts the sound or
Yeah, I guess
makes it
Shell
in one
hasn't-
ear.
Shell hasn't heard the past, 2 minutes of conversation, but, yeah, that's how I ate the whole thing. It was, it was pretty spicy, but,
The whole
it all worked
baby?
out.
Hey, guys, I know you weren't talking about that.
Look, no, Bird's explosive re-entry into,
Shell
being a
literally
carnivore
heard the entire
has,
conversation because it was all Wander talking in the room next
Yeah,
to her.
I know, Keith. I know, Keith. It was called the joke humor, and I was telling
no,
one.
you have to
It
realize
was a humor of joke.
Keith has
now I
surgically
have a hair in my
removed his
throat. God,
Now-
everything's going terrible for me.
Keith surgically removed his sense of humor to be more angry at video games.
I mean,
He had,
Oh,
he had
not
to make room
I'm
for
not an
all of
angry
that
person.
anger.
one of the best audio cable glitches I had ever gotten was I was listening to a soundtrack, and it was like a lot of female vocals, and somehow the audio cable twisted around in such a way that the main treble melody got taken out, and I was only hearing all the harmonies, and I'm like, wow, I actually love this song this way, and I've never been able to replicate it since.
Huh.
It might have been a balancing thing where it took the audio out of one ear and then not the other.
Yeah,
so then,
that's probably what happened. A little weird.
There is weird stuff where different territories of the audio are dealt with different parts of the connection, so you can just flat out lose some of them. Like, I've had someone complain that my video didn't have commentary in it when it did. Because they were only hearing the game and not me, but that was because of their weird headphone connection that somehow managed to separate it.
I had an old CD player, and it was so bad, like, the connection was so awful, that I could just, wiggle the cable just a smidge, and it would let me hear the music, everything, except for the singing. Which was really nice,
weird.
because I didn't like the singing, because I think it was, like, Britney Spears and some other dude, but the actual background stuff, it was one of the Pokemon soundtracks, and, like, some of the songs were just downright obnoxious.
There was a Britney Spears Pokemon song?
Yeah, I think it was.
What?
I mean, this is This is
I
like
wouldn't
10-year-old
be surprised
me.
if they
so.
gotten 90s pop people to do
Oh,
something.
Pika.
So that's the thing. Did you guys ever actually?
Sure, they didn't just put like "Work It, Bitch" on the theme song on the soundtrack for Pokemon.
Did you guys ever actually listen to any of the Pokemon soundtracks?
No,
They almost
no.
never featured songs from the actual movies. They were just pop songs.
I've never even seen the movies plural.
Yeah.
Really.
For me, there's a Pokemon movie.
Oh right, I forgot.
I just saw the first one. I didn't see any of the others. Yeah.
Pokemon was not really part of your childhood.
I saw the first
It was.
one in
I played the hell out of
because...
two of the Pokemon games and watched all of Pokemon original series in Johto and probably whatever came next. And that was it.
I saw the first Pokemon movie in a sling in 3rd grade after falling on the playground playing Lion King and breaking my collarbone, my clavicle. Mm-hmm. But I had to see it in theaters, and my senior quote was actually one of Mewtwo's lines. The circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with that life that determines who you are.
She will see.
Except he was saying it in the Yami Yugi
She
voice.
will see a Mewtwo toy or something.
Oh, I think
in
she's
store.
quoted it on the podcast before.
Yeah, no, she probably has, or probably one of our podcasty series, like Warcraft.
When your parents came over for the first time, didn't I bring down my Mewtwo collection?
Yes.
And your mom was like, "Oh yeah, Carl had me make him a Mewtwo costume way back in the day."
His armor was kick-ass.
I'm surprised that wasn't just your response to meeting family. It's like, you should meet my family. It's like, where you were born does not matter.
Look up, Google image search Mewtwo quote porn or Mewtwo quotes.
No.
It's so funny just to see. No. Quote porn isn't actually porn, Shell. But like it's just pictures of Mewtwo or like fan art with like the quotation that Shell just said like juxtaposed on the image.
And like typography with like randomly changing like sizes to make it all perfectly just
I sometimes wonder if Shell just narrowly dodged the extreme Sonic fandom bullet purely based on happenstance.
Luck? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he was one of my first crushes as a child.
Oh.
Mewtwo, not Sonic.
Oh.
Not Sonic. No. Mewtwo, yeah.
She liked them knobbly ass fingers.
Well, who wouldn't? Right?
Yeah. And the weird like neck tubes and the odd
Yeah, what the hell is going on? Does he have like a pneumatic powered skull? Why has he got like some like his spine comes out of like the top of his
I always had the hardest
He's a psychic type, so I don't know.
I always had the hardest time with Mewtwo's design because actually the manga kind of addressed this, that apparently Mewtwo is like hella frail in actuality, and like
he's held together purely by psychicdom. Yeah,
if it weren't for like his like sheer psychic powers, he would actually just straight up die. And I think in the manga at least, they had
in the movies he got pummeled by Giovanni though. And it was hilarious because it was just Yami Yugi and Dark Bakura arguing with one another.
He's punching that cancer patient.
Like in the comic, they actually had the apparently his like human component was the gym leader of Cinnabar Island, that like old guy that kind of looked like Dr. Wily.
But then I thought they retconned it so that he was like cloned alongside that little girl, and he was actually a baby at one point.
Maybe?
No, this isn't the manga. This was another.
Yeah, see, I'm talking about the manga. The manga.
Baby Mewtwo is really cute.
The manga is like the only thing I've really like exposed myself to in any like within the past 20 years.
I mean, the games are the canon, right? Because they're the original.
Yeah. Manga is actually like shockingly
the
good.
expanded card game universe.
Isn't like the Yu-Gi-Oh manga amazing? And like everything else Yu-Gi-Oh is like banal and stupid.
Actually, the manga is extremely dark, and you have people actually killing them in those.
Well, the Duel Monsters wasn't even like part of Yu-Gi-Oh originally. Duel Monsters got
true.
added later. They're like,
and it's when Yu-Gi-Oh starts to really suck.
Yeah,
it's actually really funny how, if you think about it, we call the card game Yu-Gi-Oh, but they can't call it Yu-Gi-Oh because it can't be named after Yugi, because that wouldn't make sense. So it is Duel Monsters, I suppose. Yeah.
The show was called Yu-Gi-Oh, and then like several storylines in, eventually a card game called Duel Monsters showed up for a standalone episode thing. But then that eventually got too popular, so it became the entire next season, and then the rest of the show forever, and then several spin-off shows, and a real card game. And then for recognition's sake, even though it makes no sense, they name the card game in real life after the show, which just makes it more confusing, because in the universe, it's not.
One of my
Let's
favorite...
just Google Yugi the Hedgehog.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, this was worth doing. There's a lot to choose from, and it's exactly what you would expect.
It has to. Well, yeah, the spikes would just be replaced with Yugi's hair.
Wait. Search Kaiba the Hedgehog. See if we can get some fanfic crossfic.
Oh no!
Was it Seto Kaiba? Is that what his name was?
Yeah.
Oh my god! It's just Shadow. It's just Shadow the Hedgehog wearing pants and a coat.
Wow, these are magic and stupid.
Seto Kaiba the Hedgehog has 3 blue eyes, white dragons.
Someone also made up a Sonic the Hedgehog card.
Yeah, that's not nearly as funny.
I do appreciate that at least one of the images on the list is actually like a legit creature that looks really stupid, but still.
How about if I look up Joey the Hedgehog, I'm not going to find the right one.
I found a picture of Yugi and Shadow the Hedgehog hugging and bleeding.
Maybe Knuckles.
Can't find like Joey. Wait, maybe Joey Wheeler the Hedgehog. Yeah, let's see if we get the whole thing in there.
Are you guys going to do this every episode? We talk about
anytime we talk. Actually, we don't get any hedgehogs.
I'm not seeing any hedgehogs.
I think every podcast we've talked about like hedgehog crossovers.
Wait, there better not be a Mewtwo the Hedgehog.
I don't even have to do it anymore. It just happens on its own. At this point, you guys are self-motivated to do this.
I think...
No, there's no Mewtwo the Hedgehog, though there are some pretty good analogs.
Oh, wait. No, there aren't.
No, I'm not...
Huh. There's Mewtwo versus Shadow. There's a lot of that.
I think it's because they appeared in Super Smash Brothers, so...
Yeah,
it's
SEO safe a little bit just because of...
God, Sonic was the most boring Smash Brothers character.
Wasn't he like...
He was impossible.
Every single move you used was another version of him doing a spin ball and hitting someone.
Mm-hmm.
Or
that's the only thing they could animate was him spinning.
I just remember it being so unruly that you would more likely kill yourself.
Oh yeah, no, I killed myself with it. I that was still when I was like, okay, Sonic is kind of a cool character, and I was glad that he had been added, and I was like trying to play him, and I kept dying, and I'm like,
I just found him staggeringly boring because everything was a
he didn't have an interesting moveset.
Have you all seen that video where they took the model of Princess Peach and gave her the moveset and the spine of Sonic?
Oh, dude, look up
so awesome.
Luigi plus DK.
Oh man.
Luigi Donkey Kong moveset. Yeah, so for people who don't know, you can basically swap out the moveset on any model. And
was it called Brawl Minus or Brawl Plus?
I don't know. It like grossly messes up their model, and they look like grotesque horror monsters.
I got the wrong
Princess Peach will have like she has like
he probably got a Peach
claws.
XDK thing.
No, I got Prince Sonic and Princess Peach. Sonic is in love with Princess Peach now, and he's an Arcanine.
Oh, is that by
wait, an Arcanine?
Oh,
it has almost 19,000 views.
Is that the one that Danny was reading out loud during
Oh, is it a fanfic?
No, it's just music playing with a bunch of pictures of Princess Peach and Sonic and Arcanine with all of his like stripes colored blue. I don't think there's a single picture of Sonic in this. It's just Prince Sonic is apparently an Arcanine for some reason, and it's like it's just every picture of it's like every different anime picture of Arcanine, but like they painted over all of his black stripes with blue with like Microsoft Paint. And there's like no context to it. It's just alternating between pictures of Princess Peach and pictures of Sonic Arcanine. And that's the whole video for 6.5 minutes of one song playing in the background with that description. I don't understand what other people use YouTube for. I get really confused.
I mean, people really love AMVs.
Like I recently discovered food review channels where they just go to fast food places and eat it in their car, and then did they get a following on YouTube for doing that?
Oh, I've heard of people doing that, where they'll do it with like In-N-Out. Like that one's really popular for some reason.
SonicTheWolf.wmv.
Oh my god.
Oh, it's there's Fox.
What have you found, Wander?
Is that a Mario with a Sonic moveset?
I think Sonic, but I'm having trouble deciding. But Sonic,
they made his legs
Sonic.
longer.
Mario just has crazy bonitis.
I can't. Oh wait, SSBP move swap code.
Sonic.
Captain Falcon Sonic.
It's a horror.
Whoa!
His eyes are
Whoa!
really close.
Oh my god, these are so weird looking.
Fall.
So
Fall Fate's so bad.
Fox Wolf doesn't really look too bad.
Because they have
they're very similar.
Well, I mean,
modeling.
effectively, Wolf was a
reskin.
Yeah, kind of reskin with slightly unique moves.
Whoa, King Day Peach is hilarious.
Oh,
he's like using his like hammer like very flamboyantly and like spinning it around behind him and stuff.
Olimar.
Dude, go to about 2 minutes in.
No,
Marlamar is amazing.
I'm not looking at that one. Wait, am I?
I don't know.
They look like babies.
Picadorf.
Picadorf is hilarious because he's super tall, and I think we're looking at the same video. I think I found it. Let me go ahead and paste this in so that everyone can. Oh yeah, we are watching the same video.
Actually, he pasted it to you. Yeah.
Oh man, though. I wasn't ready for Peach Kirby. That one's scary.
Kirby.
Kirby is 726.
Wait,
726 in.
Don't skip ahead. Go to the 3-minute with Lucario with somebody else's moveset. He just T-pose swings around like a weird weapon.
T-posed dancing.
Oh my god. What is the Captain Falcon one at 3 minutes?
Is it
Falcario? Captain Falcario looks amazing because he's all squashed down.
Whoa. Oh, so this has now just become a podcast react channel.
This quickly became the most weirdly unfollowable podcast of like what is happening.
Sorry, we're just doing a Let's React at this point.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, we're the latest partners of React World.
Oh no.
Okay, let's top this all off with a screen cap. Or no, it's just a screen cap of Peach as Kirby. And
we'll just like Kirby.
I'm getting there. I'm just watching Longabar do his whatever.
Here we are. Here's Peach's Kirby. I pasted it into Discord.
Wait, does she have like a dick? Oh, that's her shoe. That is her shoe.
Oh my god, she does have a dick. Whoa! Hey. I didn't realize this. That's wrong.
Is terrifying.
Oh god. Okay, Keith, when you edit this, you need to just you're gonna have a real fun time trying to make this all make sense.
Yeah, you know the easy way to make it make sense is
you're gonna delete all of this.
Just skip right past it. Then it makes perfect sense.
It's a damn shame because this is magic shit. All right, whatever.
Oh man. Alrighty. What were we talking about before I ruined the podcast?
I'm not gonna post somebody else's YouTube video into my video.
No.
So let's switch topics, seeing as that one is in the death.
So we were talking about the dungeon thing, and then somehow we were talking
I was talking
Pokemon
about bad
and
dumb jokes,
and then Sonic because
let's talk about games. Cuphead, go.
It is a video game. The end.
Okay. Moving on.
It's weird. It's really glitchy, which has been a surprise. Like, not always in major ways, but I've seen on my playthrough and other people's playthroughs, the game just freezes sometimes, which is obviously tragic.
Yeah, I've seen that happen to lots of people.
There's an ongoing problem where if you take damage, your controller vibrates, and then it'll vibrate forever until you take damage again. And you can't turn vibration off anywhere in the settings for some reason. But they had the forethought to let it so you can customize the controls entirely, which is nice, which is good because the default controls are bad. I don't know a single person who uses the default controls because they only use face buttons and no triggers. But in a game where you probably want to just be shooting 100% of the time, like making left trigger your shoot button, for example, so you can just hold it thoughtlessly forever is a no-brainer. So the first thing you do when you play Cuphead is just manually bind all the controls from scratch instead of using any of the defaults, which exclusively use face buttons. Which of course means if you're hitting A or X to shoot or whatever, then every time you jump or switch weapons or do any action ever, you're stopping shooting and stuff like that if you use face buttons, unless you're doing some weird like cross button thumbing or something like that, which is way too complicated for a controller that has triggers. I've been having fun with it, but it's like brutally hard. Like it is pure trial and error pattern recognition. Like you just are, you go into every boss doomed to fail. And then you have to just learn from trial and error what all the ins and outs are of the boss and their patterns. And almost every time you get to a new phase, you're often doomed to fail that phase because you need to learn the phase by dying to it, essentially. Then rebeat the previous phases to get to the new phase. And some of the bosses have 5 phases, which the phases themselves are short, but they were just brutal. Like so much stuff can be happening at once.
I have to wonder to myself sometimes, like, you know, making your bosses very puzzly oriented and you go in and you have to like figure them out can be really fun. But the way that you make that really work is if you borrow mechanics from boss to boss so that you can recognize like, oh, they're about to do this even though you've never seen them before. Like otherwise,
that's what Dark Souls does.
This is an opinion that I've only been forming pretty recently.
Like it's like the Dark Souls thing where like Dark Souls will have a recurring thing where a boss will like crouch down and glow a bit, and like as if energy is being brought in, and you know that means they're going to explode. Yeah, and like that's universal throughout the all the different Dark Souls games, for example.
But every boss still feels
Cuphead
like fresh, and they have their own movesets and stuff.
The only consistent thing in Cuphead is that if anything is pink ever, that means you can parry it because there's a parry button. Mixed feelings on that at times.
It looks really awkward reviving your allies because it's super unforgiving. It's like, here's a boss, you only have 4 HP, you're down to 1, your ally is dead,
you only have
here's
3
a big
hit
damage
points.
zone you can't get past.
This is a game where you only get 3 hit points.
You can get an item that gives you more HP, but it's a noob trap, right? And it like
every
makes
item
it so that you stop doing damage.
Every item that makes you get more hit points reduces your damage and also takes up that slot that could have been a useful thing to equip instead. So it's kind of a trap, whereas you kind of just need to learn the fights. But yeah, like if you're playing in co-op, your co-op partner will turn into a ghost when they run out of hit points and drift up the screen. And there's a relatively smart system there where the more times you die, the faster you drift up each time, so that eventually it becomes nearly impossible to save you after a certain number of times. And this sounds like it would break the game. Like the sheer amount of leniency you get in co-op with being able to revive each other over and over and over again, admittedly with only 1 hit point, feels like it'd be like a Dark Souls style like difficulty like obliterator. Because like Dark Souls has an ongoing thing where like unless there's a staggeringly hard boss, almost everything is like a sleepwalk when you go into co-op. Like there was like when we played Dark Souls 3 in co-op, like there was so many bosses where like that was my day when I got to that boss. Like I had to just learn the thing ins and outs and spend all day on it and practice, and then we would beat it in 1 try. And it would be like, well, there goes the hardest boss in the game. You'll have to believe me. and the ones that turned out to be hard were almost weird contradictions, like the sages and stuff like that. They were like weird gimmick fights that weirdly subvert the difficulty curve that you would expect from single to multiplayer. But in Cuphead, co-op does not stack things in your favor. As far as I can tell, it actually is actively harder than playing single player. And the main reason for that is that in a 2-dimensional side-scrolling shooter game like Metal Slug, whenever a hazard happens that's supposed to hurt the characters during a boss fight, that's often like a screen-spanning damage source, right?
Yeah.
So like, let's say the boss has twice as much health, because I don't know how much health they have, but it feels like they have actually like straight up twice as much, as opposed to like 30% more or whatever Dark Souls does. That means you need to be shooting him twice as much, but the issue is that every time hazards happen, you're like getting diverted away from shooting the targets because you're dealing with avoiding all the different hazards, and every single hazard could potentially hurt both of you at the same time. So despite the fact that you have to deal twice as much damage to the boss, oftentimes 1 attack can do exactly as much damage as it used to your side of the thing, because it can hurt both of you at the same time. And often it just turns into such a scramble of trying to keep each other alive while trying to slowly wear down a boss where every single phase takes twice as long, that it actually, in my experience, everyone seems to have an easier time just playing it solo than in co-op, despite how many things seem to be on your side in the co-op
setup. I have yet to watch a solo playthrough, but I've watched a ton of co-op playthroughs, and everybody everybody is getting murdered.
Yeah.
Just getting destroyed by that game in co-op.
Playing it solo feels almost like it's not the point, because like the cover of the game, like the start screen has 2 characters dancing around, and the cutscenes have 2 characters in them, and like there's a mechanic taught to you in the tutorial about how to play co-op that seems to imply that you should, like, co-op is the point. Like it's like, oh yeah, it's mandatory that you learn that mechanic in the tutorial.
See, that's interesting
even
to
though
me.
You don't have to play co-op in the first place.
That's interesting to me, and I agree that the marketing really makes it seem like it should be co-op. But when you really pay attention to the gameplay and you look past the marketing, it's clear that like co-op was just kind of tacked on as an afterthought and balanced like really weirdly.
So the number one time that comes into play is actually during all of the what I think are the weakest part of the game, the run and gun segments.
Yeah,
because there's the boss fights that are clearly the point and originally were the only thing. Then there's these run and gun levels where they're like, we'll add levels to the game because if we can say there's levels in the game, people will buy it and be less afraid of buying it, I guess.
Right. No, it looks like you're talking about the ones that are just like they look like the Mega Man stages.
Yeah, there's
like,
side-scrolling levels where you have to try to get to the end.
Yeah.
And quickly, like, all the chaos of the visuals that normally applies to all the other levels becomes more problematic because you're now scrolling the screen, whereas in every other boss fight, like, the screen never moves.
Oh,
it's stationary.
yeah. And so then you have that thing where, like, people, if you move too fast, especially if it's an auto-scroller, your partner can die and stuff. I've seen that get lots of people.
Yeah, how
weird
do they
elements
tether
of, like,
them together?
Oh, they don't? It's just if you move the screen too fast, they
stick
die.
together.
Yep.
You just have to stick together.
Wander and I were...
Huh? So, like, the issue it gets into for the co-op, to finish the thought, is just that, like, what becomes a problem is that when you play a side-scrolling shooting game, there's often, like, a specific, like, time to kill for enemies. Like, enemies charging you, you hold the attack button, and if you were shooting them the moment they started coming after you, you'd usually kill them before they reach you, right? That's like how Metal Slug and every other game works ever, is like there's like a certain pacing that makes sense for how vulnerable enemies should be to fighting you. In this game, we quickly realized this because I would like bow out, I would like remove player 2, and Andrew would play alone, and then I'd come back in, and we could very easily observe this, that like if an enemy charges you from the off screen and comes at you, and you're shooting him, he'll die in single player. In co-op, he'll reach you before he dies. Like because even the normal enemies are buffed up for co-op health, even though on average they'll usually be being fought by one guy, because that's how you would logically play co-op. So and then on top of that, there's like destructible platforms. There's platforms that destroy after you that get blown up after you step on them, or there's an enemy attack that will like target you and destroy the platform you're on as a result, and like a bunch of movement puzzles where that are all clearly designed around a single player experience, where the moment you had a second person, you just can't do, like, it doesn't work as well. So it's like, in order to play any of the side-scrolling levels in co-op, you essentially have to always shoot the same enemy at the same time while standing in the same place, and basically be like Pacific Rim, like drifting. Like you have to be the same person somehow, because every time you deviate from each other in any way, you're screwing each other over, and you will be worse off than you would be single player. It's weird balancing. Strange.
Yeah, because it's like those levels where you only have so many blocks of ice, or else you fall into the water. But if you're both using different squares, eventually they all get depleted.
It also absolutely requires that specific brand of patience for boss fights that I don't know anyone else that has. So I don't have any options to play it with that aren't going to be frustrated with it. Andrew has been mad, I'm sure.
Yep. That's actually... we had considered it, but then we're like, no, it's going to ruin everything.
You had mentioned it. People had suggested it.
That's the end of the consideration.
And yeah, I was like, no. There's no way we are playing that and having a good time. I know...
No.
I know.
I get frustrated with myself for bringing
We tried
down,
playing Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time, and by the end of it, we were yelling at each other. If we can't handle that,
that's supposed to be casual by comparison.
Yeah.
Well, that was because we were doing we were trying to control a ship with 4 different components, and
it was awkward. I'd like to try it in 4-player.
Yeah, 4-player would definitely be easy with that one, because then everyone would just have their own role. Switching between different, I think, what was it? With the engines, you had to scoot in different directions.
We had to do some stuff. It was a pain.
Yeah.
Dang.
It was fun, though.
Yep.
Just trying to run away from, like, bombs that are, like, destroying whole chunks of the level with 2 people, one of which is, like, juggling shields and shooting, and it was
I think that
fun hard.
Like, when I was looking at Cuphead and trying to determine, just based off of, I'm going to look at the Steam store page and, like, suss out, like, is this a good game or not? If a game advertised itself as, like, emphasis on boss fights, I immediately become pretty wary, because, like, that usually just means that anything that's not a boss fight is going to feel like filler. And from what I can tell, looking at things that are not boss fights in Cuphead, they're not poorly designed, but they feel like it's just, like, they don't teach you the mechanics of the game, right?
I mean, they definitely feel like filler. They're incredibly tiny levels, and there's also literally more boss fights than run and gun levels.
Yeah. In a lot of games that are run and gun platformers, the level will teach you mechanics that you then use in the boss fight, and that's really well designed. And in Cuphead, the level is just like, okay, you're going to just, like, run forward for a little while, and then it has almost no relation to anything that actually occurs in the boss fight.
So I've got something else they did weird there, which is that at first it looks like the run and gun levels are optional.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole thing is that you, like, made a deal with the devil, and now you have to collect these people's souls, which is why you have to do all the boss fights.
Right.
But you quickly encounter these, like, Chronicles of Mystara looking like Capcom D&D like item stores, and the only way to get money in this game is the run and gun levels. Every run and gun level has 5 coins in it that you have to collect manually in a successful run, and that's the only source of money in the entire game. So if you want to get any of the different types of shots, or the, like, lower health, or lower damage, higher health thing, or there's one that lets you parry, get your first parry for free every time you jump, and a bunch of other different variations. Like there's one that makes your dodge dash have invincibility frames because you disappear. Like, there's tons of options there. But you can only get them by doing the less good run and gun levels, which is, like, a bummer.
And the ones that you're good at too. So
and that quickly became an issue, because, like, in one of the run and gun levels, there was one where, like, these ladybug roly-poly looking things are, like, going around, and they'll be bouncing up and down the inside of this log that we're playing in. And there's clearly a gold coin floating in the air higher than you can jump towards. And you're supposed to, there's one ladybug or roly-poly in the group that's pink, and you're supposed to catch that with a parry in midair to get to the coin. But if you're playing in co-op, the scrolling speed of the screen gets weird if you're not perfectly in sync and perfectly working at the exact pace the game expects you to walk at, which offsets the physical placement of the spawn of the roly-poly that's bouncing through the hallway, so that it'll be either come by too early before you can ever catch it, or it'll actually be physically out of sync with the location of the coin, like visibly breaking in co-op. I'm like, how did this happen?
It's a local co-op. How do you get a desynchronization issue?
Well, it's because it'll be tied to, like, the screen scrolling as opposed to the character position. And if you're, like, splitting, if you're, like, not quite standing in the same place, then it leads to the screen being located strangely when you're not playing single player.
So let's go say that you have your character standing at the center of the screen, and your friend is standing at the center of the screen with you. The camera centered. But if they were to scoot to the right, would the screen slightly go to the right to sort of hit the median where the 2 characters are standing apart from one another? Is it like that?
I don't actually know. How does that work?
I'm trying to
So the
check.
camera... Imagine if the character imagine if the camera focuses on the space between your 2 characters.
Like, the camera moves about as intuitively as you expect it to, but the issue is that, like, you can't just, like, remember how it works without playing it, you know?
Yeah, I'm watching my own video to try to look at it and see what it looks like, and it kind of seems like the center of the screen is kind of averaging between the 2 of you, But also like whoever's moving forward, like it has to follow them. So if like I think somebody moves forward too fast, the person behind can be left off the screen because the screen doesn't zoom because it's a 2D game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all like that's all the drawing there is. I can't zoom out. And it definitely leads to a problem where like if one of you is like there's constantly holes because it's a platformer in the run and gun levels, so you're jumping over a hole, but like there'll be like a woodpecker or a bouncing hazard or just something will be like around the hole that makes the timing of the jump weird, so you have to like time when you're going to jump for it, which always leads to co-op splits where one of you already went for it and the other one's still going for their time to make the jump.
It makes you miss,
which leads to the screen being averaged around you guys, which leads to like the guy that's ahead being vulnerable of maybe stuff coming at them from the forward direction of the level because they can't see ahead of themselves.
Constantly to people playing the game.
Like I honestly don't think I really ever have really have fun playing the side-scrolling levels where I generally am like up for the rest of the game. And there's also a little bit of the Fury effect, which is that when I started playing Fury, I liked that it was like I liked the melee system and the parry system, and I liked like the occasional like boom, snap out a little like pistol shot at that guy when in vulnerable moments and stuff like that. But then like some of the later Fury boss fights were like kind of shoot 'em up, like bullet hell scenarios where you're dodging around giant amounts of bullets and you kind of can only shoot back and can't melee fight. And in a similar tone to that, like there are, as far as I can tell so far, we're 2 worlds in, and it looks like every world is going to have one shoot 'em up level where you're playing. So like in a game, so like the game has these really tight side-scrolling fights. I mean not side-scrolling, 2D fights where it's just you and your friend standing in one screen while a boss goes all over the screen and has all these patterns and moves. But also once per, like there's like 4 of those per world, but then 2 run and gun fights and 1 shoot 'em up boss fight. Where like the running guns are straight up like this game was not made for this, and it's kind of blatant. And then whereas the shoot 'em up parts are more like this is just not what I wanted. It's not necessarily not designed around it. It's just I didn't really want to become a plane and start playing like Ikaruga all of a sudden because I'm bad at that.
Now, how did things like Kirby's Epic Yarn and the Super Smash Bros. Brawl co-op, how did their cameras function? Or did it just keep everything on the screen and both
I don't know anything about those games, but also I know Kirby's supposed to be like mindlessly easy and
Kirby's Epic Yarn, you actually cannot lose. You don't have a health bar. The only thing that happens is you lose your goodies. So you lose cash. What were the other games? Brawl?
I was just thinking of like, because those are co-op games that have a lot of side scrolling, and I'm just trying to think of how their cameras dealt with everything. I remember that when we tried to play the third Spyro game that had come out more recently on the Wii, and they actually had it as part of the plot that your characters are connected by some kind of mystical collar system, and it's almost like a rubber band. You can stretch a certain way, but then you have to get dragged back. It was hella
awkward.
It was really hard to platform with that.
That sounds really, really weird. Or it could be like Sonic Mania, which is hilarious. Have you ever tried to watch anybody attempt to co-op Sonic Mania?
I did it.
How?
It was me. I did it.
How?
Well, I attempted.
How did you do that?
Didn't succeed.
I was gonna say, like,
no. Yeah,
Sonic Mania, literally just, if you're playing a Sonic and Tails, the camera was only on Sonic, and Tails is screwed.
We played the entire game as Sonic and Tails, where I was Sonic and Andrew was Tails, and he would just be like Doppler affecting past the screen from time to time, like,
Yeah,
and he would just
because, like, Sonic will just, like, suddenly zoom, spin dash away, or, like, touch a spring and be gone, and then Tails won't have done that. So
Sonic and Tails co-op is miserable. It's actually legitimately bad. It's the one thing that most people usually don't argue with me on, no matter how much they're a Sonic fanboy, is how stupid 2D side-scroller Sonic co-op is. Because on top of...
And they kept that exactly the same for Sonic Mania.
Well, that's because Sonic Mania is a slavish recreation of everything nostalgic people like, with no attempts to, like, iterate on the bad parts at all.
And I appreciated that in a lot of ways. There were some moments where I was like, oh, come on, this is intentionally a pain in the ass, but I remember it being that as a kid, so I can totally understand this.
Yeah, what was rough is that, like, what I didn't realize until I actually held the controller at one point is that in Sonic Mania Co-op, it's not just that the camera doesn't follow Tails, it's that Tails can't control himself most of the time.
Yes,
the vast majority of the time is spent with Tails slowly hovering onto the screen, and logically you'd think like, oh, Tails is on the screen now, I guess my friend must be able to play as him now. And it's like, no, you have to wait for Tails to slowly helicopter land onto some safe platform that it deems necessary, like a SimCity NPC or something like that. And then once the game graciously decides that Tails can finally land in a game about going fast, he will finally get to 0.2 seconds of control before he's off camera again. Like, it's a total wasted effort. Co-op Sonic Mania is just a process of single player with occasional, I'll stand still long enough for you to spawn so you can lift me up.
Yeah.
So Andrew's entire job was to carry me places every now and then because I couldn't figure out how to get up to it. For a whole playthrough.
That is very accurate.
One of the worst little brother modes.
Oh, yeah.
So do you guys think that one of the best ways to do side-scrolling camera is just both players have the full run of the screen, but as soon as someone goes off, they both get teleported to the edge?
No, that's so jarring.
It is too jarring?
Yeah, split screen works.
Split screen.
I think part of it is it depends on the game. With Sonic, you need split screen. You can't. You cannot share a camera because it's too fast-paced.
Bubbling is the go-to solution now.
Bubbling?
Yeah, bubbling works great.
Yeah, they used it in New Super Mario Brothers U. They used it in Super Mario 3D World, and they used it in Rayman Legends.
I believe the first instance of bubbling was actually Lego Harry Potter that I've seen. Yeah.
I played a lot of Lego Star Wars.
They started the process, and it looks really nice.
So what does that do?
Effectively, when you're on the same screen, it is you sharing a screen. But if you start to stretch away from you or like each other,
it pans out.
It pans out and then splits. And then eventually you have...
I remember that happening now that I think about it. Okay.
Oh, we're thinking
of a dynamic split screen. It looks really nice.
It's definitely the best approach.
Right. Yeah, we're thinking of different things.
Because you get the benefits of both, where if you're close together, you're on a single screen. And if you're far away, you're on a split screen. It's perfect.
So what I was talking about is that there's a lot of platformers now where if you get left behind, your character is placed in a bubble and you float after everybody to catch up with them, like Tails, essentially, and then you pop the bubble to start playing again.
Yeah, but that's how Tails works, and Tails is sad.
That works,
it's like
and that
Tails,
doesn't work.
Except it's fast.
Yeah, that's the thing.
There's no AI trying to find a landing point. It's literally like the bubbled party member will just in like 0.3 seconds like float straight towards another player, and that player can pop them, or the person can press A to start playing again. Just to deal with the idea of they were literally left off the camera.
But that sounds pretty much the same as just having them appear with everyone else on the other screen, but at the edge.
No,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of it's not at the edge. It's like with that other player.
I just always found it awkward because sometimes like the camera would jerk and then everybody but one person would die, and it's just like, why do you do this?
Yeah, you can't have a spontaneous spawn point without any interaction because then the people will just fall off cliffs.
Because, I had that with Rayman Legends. I'd play co-op with my friends back before I started doing YouTube. And there were a couple of, like, jumps where you'd hit, like, a bounce pad and kill the rest of the party. I was always a little bit grumpy about that. But then again, I was also the one on the gamepad most of the time, so it didn't even matter to me.
God, it's weird thinking that game's that old already.
Yeah.
We
already have a fun game, though.
We already haven't had a single new Rayman game for your entire YouTube career.
Yep.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Ubisoft, man.
I saw you and Andrew.
So good.
I watched you and Andrew playing that early on in my channel, and I was like, I want to play that. And then I found out you guys were in California. I'm like, well, fuck that.
And then you came to California.
Yeah. But we played Dragon's Crown instead, which apparently is coming to PS4 with online multiplayer, so things. Anyway.
That game sure is Chronicles of Mystara.
Yep.
But long.
Yeah. And with Odin Sphere art.
Now with loot grinding.
Yeah. any game that has loot grinding in it, if I can't like just pull out Cheat Engine and just like kind of soften it a little bit, I just get so annoyed nowadays.
Except for all those games where that's your whole drive to play it, and you can't get enough of it forever.
Warframe, yeah.
Yeah, he's currently playing it now.
I'm currently playing it now.
I was gonna say, I was gonna say, Wander's probably complaining about the concept of loot grinding while literally loot grinding in the background.
And you see,
haven't you been playing Warframe all morning, Wander?
He's been playing Warframe.
I played Warframe
6
for
hours
about
a day while things render.
Well, I've been streaming Warframe. I haven't been playing it off camera because I've been playing it on camera.
That too.
But they had their like open world expansion.
Weren't you gonna tell them about Shadow of War?
I mean, there's really not much to say about that game. It's just Shadow of Mordor.
Well.
Yeah, except for
also, Shelob turned into a seductress lady, and I was like, what's Shelob doing in?
Yeah, so Shelob
form?
turns into like Dark Galadriel. Even does the same like
she does the same beginning
intro.
Voice thing. Yeah, the same intro,
and then makes both the main characters of the Shadow of Blank series into pissy bitches, and that's when I lost interest.
Well, she steals their ring.
Yeah, she steals their one ring to rule them all, and then they hate each other after that, and are like blaming each other for everything. And I'm just like, I've lost interest in this.
They were trying to help a besieged city called what was it? Was it Minas Idril? And it actually ends up being Minas Morgul in the Lord of the Rings, which is the stronghold of the ring race that Sam and Frodo walk by.
Yeah. It was, I don't know. I mean, so Shadow of Mordor, I only played about 2 hours of it because 1, getting started late, 2, performance issues, and 3, just not that interested anymore. It really just felt like Shadow of Mordor 2, but with extra...
You forgot about Snafu!
I don't care, Shell.
He was one of the orcs.
You're strong-arming me into a podcast topic, and I'm trying to talk about it, and then you're strong-arming me on what to talk about. You talk about the...
Everyone's been talking about how they... I mean, I agree with it, that it's definitely detrimental to have the whole... You know, if you buy more things, you can get through the game a tad easier. Well,
there's a whole dedicated screen where they ask for your real money while a weird goblin man miserly rubs his hands together greedily for your money. Yeah,
really?
Because that's the loot box screen. Is this one dude like greedily like, yes, more money?
Oh God!
like
there's no irony there. WB.
Wait, so what do you buy? Do you buy super special weapons?
No, you buy... You remember Fortnite loot boxes?
Oh.
Yeah.
What a surprise that the publisher that put out that completely unplayable port of the PC version of the last Batman game and just thought they'd get away with it might be unethical.
I was going to say, isn't this the next Arkham Knight?
Oh, really? Arkham Knight had that in it?
Oh, well,
it didn't have mechanic, but it had horrible performance issues.
It still has performance issues. I will give them credit.
I saw Wander stream Arkham Knight, and it looked like a slideshow. Like it was literally just
awful,
freezing every 2 seconds over and over again. And it's like this is a real
product. Better.
I'm amazed that you liked that game enough to like see it all the way through the end with how much of a disaster like the streaming experience was because of like
he really likes Batman.
I know, and then like towards the end of it, there were so many people.
Batman games.
There were so many people coming into your streams just to spoil the story, and I was like, "Oh God, this is like a nightmare."
Yeah, that was, I think, kind of the perfect storm for why I try hard not to play like popular AAA games anymore, if possible. I mean, obviously, like, it doesn't always work that way, but I find, like, with JRPGs, people almost never spoil it. But if it's, like, a really popular AAA game with, like, some kind of story or something, people will, like, instantly try spoiling everything. Like, for Persona, I made it to the very end of the game, and the only person that spoiled anything was myself, because I kept guessing the plot correctly. And that was weird.
It happens. I mean, when you've seen enough media,
I got to like a random cutscene, and I'm like, this guy's the last boss, and 2 people in my audience is like, stop reading the wiki, and I'm like, no, you don't get it. It's so obvious. He's the last boss.
Is that the detective guy?
No, he was actually just a random mid-boss.
Whatever happened to him anyway? Like I saw that whole thing where he was like, so how does it feel to be like what are they called? The Phantom Thieves. And then everyone was like, no.
Effectively, so Persona spoilers if anybody actually cares. Effectively, you get, there's like this boy detective, he's like so beautiful and perfect and everybody loves him. Is immediately kind of played up to be kind of your foil. He's like tracking you down and he's like, you know.
He and this politician have about a 10-minute plus long conversation where they're just like...
You like to jump ahead. Let me finish. So they play
you're actually going to talk about that?
Yes!
Okay.
So they play this entire plotline up that this guy is going to, like, discover you. And what ends up happening is actually really early on in the process, he finds out who you are because you have a talking cat, and only people that can go into the metaverse, the, like, human subconscious, can hear this talking cat. And he hears the talking cat wanting pancakes, and he reacts to that. And it's apparently, it's a huge plot point later on where that's how they figure out he's like a lying sack of shit. But so he's more or less spending the entire game being friends with the entire party and being like super coy, because he knows the Phantom Thieves and he's just waiting for his like perfect opportunity to betray them. And betray them he does, obviously. You know, he joins the party for a little bit. He more or less forces his way into the party. It's kind of like, what's a good example? I don't know. Kind of like Yuffie, except for not endearing. Because didn't Yuffie, like, kind of force her way into the party in Final Fantasy VII?
Yes. Yeah, you could recruit her
X-Men.
early or something. But
wasn't there an X-Men character that joined and then betrayed everyone?
Many.
Probably.
All of them.
Yeah, there's so many. And X-Men, yeah.
I mean, if Cyclops betrays the X-Men, then everybody ends up betraying the X-Men at some point. But so, so he joins the party and it's like super smarmy and he's like kind of the perfect party member and he's like immediately ousting everybody except for the main character who, like,
Ousting as in...
Well, like, every character that, like, has kind of provided a unique service until now, like, intuition or skills or whatever, he can do it. So he really is the self-insert character, which is hilarious because, you know, the main character is that. Anyway, so he wiggles his way onto the party and almost immediately the entire, several cutscenes start going silent. And characters will be talking to each other, but you can't hear them, and there's, like, weird music, and it's, like, grayed out a little bit, and apparently it's because the main character's been drugged. The whole thing's a flashback, and so you can't remember exactly what the ruse was, you know, so they could have this clever reveal, except for they more or less play their hand almost immediately. And so it turns out, in the very end, he betrays you, but you've double-crossed him, and so you make him think that he killed you, but he killed you in the dreamscape, where he just killed an imaginary you in somebody's mind, and then felt really smug about himself. And the main character
is that really how No. Is that really how they resolve that whole plot line?
Yeah, so you trick him into going into the collective subconscious, and then shoot an imaginary version of the main character, and the main character is like, well, I'm free to go for the next month or so, and then you meet him in the next dungeon, and he's like crazy and evil, and then you beat the shit out of him 3 times, and then he doesn't really have a change of heart, but he's just like...
He just gives up. Just like, all right, you win. Well, you can kick my ass.
No, you kick his ass 3 times, and he does the, like, you know, why do you have everything I want? And then you finish kicking his ass, and then he gets betrayed by himself, because you're in... So every dungeon is in somebody's mindscape, and so you're in the big bad, like the main villain for the entire game. You're in his, like, mental mindscape.
And is he like, you've outlived your
And he's just like, you know, he sees this guy, the detective, is kind of this assassin lapdog that'll do whatever he wants. So he sends the assassin lapdog to kill himself, you know, the fake one to kill the real one. And that's how it ends. But really it ends with him hitting a button and locking himself in with a bunch of monsters that I could easily just beat the shit out of because, I mean, it's an RPG. Just enough healing spells and proper gear management and any fight is tolerable.
You forgot about how for almost an hour the heroes were trying to explain what had happened through the entirety of the game to their friends.
I want to say a 2-hour cutscene period where it's just switching back and forth between everybody being sad because the main character's dead, and the villains being like, evil.
Oh, yes, my plan is working perfectly. Oh, you are marvelous there. Oh,
yeah,
yes.
they're just masturbating in front of camera. And
gross.
Yeah, and then several other things. It was weird. The game is a weird, almost good game.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch, but like every single element was like, I don't know, 8 out of 10.
Yeah,
like the music, pretty good soundtrack. Gameplay, pretty good gameplay. Writing, pretty good writing. Characters, pretty good characters. Nothing stood out.
Yeah, if it had been half as long and they cut out a lot of the fluff, I think I would have liked it more. Because one of the main points of the game is it takes place over an actual year of this guy's life.
Yeah.
And so every day you get up and you have something to do, be it go work at a fast food joint to like get some money, get some stats, and learn some clues about like an evil manager that you're going to go change the mind of.
Persona game.
It is.
They're already long.
Yeah, all of them are long, but this is the longest one by far.
Yeah,
but you have to like
the normal run of this game is longer than the completionist run of the last game.
Yep. It took me 112 hours, and so like you also have to grind friendship points, and you have to grind personal stats like guts or charm just to be able to befriend people, and so it ends up being a lot of busy work that's like, it's not terrible, but it's so much padding that by the end of the game, you're just kind of sick of it. And
on
it's
the
so
upside,
long you can't
when they
avoid
inevitably
it.
make a Persona 5 arena game for you to play, it'll only be like 8 hours long.
Oh no, I'm not touching it. I'm not touching a single
You're not going to play
game after
Persona 5 dancing all night long.
No.
What?
Did you not hear? They pretty much took down every dancing all night video from the last generation.
I shut down on news the moment I was like, I'm not touching this publisher anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It
what are they doing about those final episodes?
I have the footage. I'll think about it. Someday I'll
Did you Twitch
bother.
stream them?
Yeah, I streamed the whole thing.
Okay. So you just haven't put up the ones that they said, like, if you put these up, we'll kill you.
Yeah, so I stopped where they told me to stop, and like what I might do is make a second channel and put the videos up.
A second channel?
A second channel? Really? You're gonna try and loophole it, Wander?
There were several loopholes, but I put it up so if people asked, I could give them access to it, but like unless
and people wonder why I turned off from this game the moment the news came out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's your livelihood. You can do what you want, but like you gotta be careful, man.
Yeah, be careful.
Because in case anyone's unclear on this, when a Persona 5 originally was like, Atlas said you couldn't go past a certain point, and they threatened us explicitly. In the second one, where they slightly walked it back, they never actually stopped saying don't go past this point. They just changed the goalpost slightly and like apologized and sounded less threatening, but never actually fully retracted the threat.
Yeah,
just in case anyone was out of the loop, because everyone thinks like everyone fell for that thing where like a politician apologizes for one thing and then everything's over now, and like, oh well, obviously that just Control Alt, Control A, delete. The whole news is over.
Yeah.
So like, no, it never went away.
The other thing too is, I mean, your issue is that you've seen other people play through it and have the endings out there, but they were a lot smaller.
No, there's bigger channels that have endings of this game. The thing is, there's not a single Let's Play that made it all the way to the end. They were all streams and generally silent. I don't think I could find a single video with commentary just because every single Let's Player ran away from it.
When Best Friends Play ran away from it and everyone back, I felt pretty confident sticking with that decision.
Yeah. Ultimately, what happened was the video...
Are they another channel?
Yeah, they're another channel.
Oh, okay.
Ultimately, the views for the whole...
Poor guys, by the way, they commissioned a like custom animated intro for that playthrough.
Whoa!
Yeah, they were super excited.
That would have cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Used it for 3 videos.
Yeah.
Why did they make themselves look like Persona characters? Is that what they
did a whole... I'll post it in the podcast chat real quick. It's on a channel called Volta Bass, which is a channel that does commissioned intros for YouTube channels, basically.
Oh, and, this commission looks cool.
Yeah, it looks really great.
Oh, it looks really good.
And it looks like Persona's art style a bit and stuff, and it has the same song and everything. It's great. Threw that shit away.
Yep. But yeah, no, I'm
this
probably
didn't cost that much money, though. But anyway, what were we going to say, Wander?
I'm probably just going to hold the footage. Maybe what I might do is just, if I'm going to be away for like 24 hours, render the thing into one big video and then hold on to it for the rest of my career until maybe they recant. Like,
and then when you die, your will will contain a URL.
It'll just be like,
to the unlisted video.
If they ever come out with like the Persona 5 golden version and they're like, yeah, fine, whatever, fuck spoilers, you go ahead, then I'll put it up and just be like, all right, done, bye. Here's a 24-hour video of the final month.
It's hard
See
to find
later.
AAA publishers that don't poison the well
the,
at some point.
Yeah, you can entrust the URL to me, Wander, and I'll
immediately send it to Atlas US.
No. Well, no. It'll be like a tontine,
I am sending
right?
that shit. I am hiding that in my will with like. You're gonna have to open up a puzzle box, and inside will be an encrypted USB drive with fucking Pipe Dream.
No, what it should be
you have to
is
play
like
Pipe Dream for 1,000 levels to unlock the video.
And there you go. There's the mystical ending to Persona 5.
Pipe Dream.
Well, what I was going to say was we set up a tontine about it where, like, all of us know it, but none of us can share the URL, and then the last person to live, they get to share the URL with everybody.
Everyone gets, like, 3 characters of the URL, like, the ending
and
part
then as you die, you give it to the other people.
Barring any health complications, statistically, I'd be the one to survive the longest since I'm a lady.
Oh.
We have a 10-year lifespan over men. Typically.
Well, the point of the tontine is that you slowly murder the other people that are in the tontine.
But none of us are blue-collar workers.
Also,
so we are statistically outliers from that statistic.
Yeah.
True.
And yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do with that footage, but I got a billion other things that get more views than it anyway, so I'm not really hurting. If it was a series like one of my Digimon, back when Cyber Sleuth was getting like fuck tons of views, I think I'd be a bit more on the wall. But it was like, by the end of it, I was getting half normal views. And I'm like, I got other shit to do. I'll care about it if...
My heart couldn't take that.
I need to. Yeah.
My heart can't take the idea of like 50 unlisted episodes of Persona or something like that.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking one fucking long one.
Can you render videos that long? How long is it? Is it 25 hours?
As far as hours go, it would be 26.
Oh my God.
That would take me like 2 days to render.
Because the last dungeon, I think, took 8 on its own to run through.
That's that can literally be multiple other games.
Yes. And that's why I like stuff like Holy Potatoes, What the Hell? Because I can just say, fuck it. I'm gonna do this series and then put it away within 10 episodes. Never think about it again.
I actually really like series that run between 10 or 20 hours. That's nice.
I'm
almost 30.
I'm about to finish Battle Chasers. I think within the next week or so. And
we're about to finish Divinity Original Sin in 2018.
Well, yeah, no, that will be a series that lasts. That's going to be our longest co-op series, save for maybe
What's
I don't know how Gmod counts.
Oh, Gmod?
Gmod kind of doesn't count because it's a rotating cast.
Yeah, it was rotating cast. Pretty much the only consistent characters were me and mostly Bird.
Like for me, our Gmod series is already shorter than Divinity.
Oh yeah.
Way more noise, random, what?
So the last thing for Persona before we end is I got to the very final boss, standing outside the door. I turned around and spent the next 2 hours making Lucifer.
I think I saw you doing that, and I was like, oh, he's gonna make this Persona. And then I was like, This is taking
legit
a while.
hate
I'll be
that
back.
part of JRPGs.
And then I came back and you were still working on it, and I was like, I'm gonna go to bed.
It took forever because I had to it nickel and dimes you super hard. It's
completionism.
Not even completionism.
For me, like,
it's
the
just
point of no return should not be right before the boss. The point of no return should be like before the entire final dungeon. Like it should feel like the final arc is one cohesive thing. Like I way prefer like the Mass Effect formula, for example, like the final mission of the first Mass Effect, where it's like, here's 3 hours of no, you're in the ending now. We're here. It's like, because otherwise the story feels like it has no stakes.
JRPGs have to give you the potential to grind at all points, because if you've somehow managed to coast through, barely managing, and then you get to the last boss and it turns out to be like impossible.
But if you've gone through that long of a game with one save file, you've made some bad life decisions.
I had a friend.
And everyone has to learn that once.
Well, we talked about the Final Fantasy one.
Yeah, so in middle school I had a friend. I'd sleep over at his place. I'd play Final Fantasy Tactics, he'd play Final Fantasy X, and it was fun because I didn't have a PS2. And he was playing, this is the guy that really focused on his summons. And he really focused on his summons, and he only had one save file. I mean, we're what, 6th graders, maybe 7th. Like, let's be honest, wise decision making is not exactly our forte. Anyway, so and
it's that childhood trauma that makes you learn.
Yeah, so he got to the point where, when in Final Fantasy X, where Seymour kidnaps Yuna in the icy area. And you have to fight a boss battle against Seymour without Yuna for the first time you played the entire game without her as a party member. So he had no healing items and he was wildly underleveled.
Oh no, that's horrible.
To the point where, because he had been focusing on summoners this entire time.
Your friend didn't have very good forethought.
No, I mean, it was the first JRPG he'd ever played. I think it was his first.
That's actually legit not the first time. Like, Yuna gets kidnapped a lot in that game.
Like, she does, you cannot rely on her. Get her back very fast.
But after the first time, you're already like, oh, we can't rely on her being a party member all the time. There's literally an entire character dedicated to kidnapping her.
Are there other games where, almost BioWare-esque, you have a party of people, but one of them betrays you, and if you just happen to have that one character as your favorite,
lots of characters
then
do
many
that.
Final Fantasy games have that, actually.
Yeah, Aerith.
That was a big one.
Yeah, she's your main healer, and poof, gone halfway through.
There's also
Chillout from Final Fantasy IV.
There's also Mass Effect and Dragon Age both have characters that are diametrically opposed to each other, where only one of them can be in your party.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And then if you sleep with one of them, you die.
That's a third example of that.
That was Samara and Morinth, right?
Yeah, there's Samara Morinth, there's Alistair Logain, and there's Ashley Caden, and I think there might even be more.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I had a friend that loved Ashley and Caden. And would bring both of them along.
My favorite characters are the most boringest ones.
I think they felt weird. I think they felt weird about Rex, and I think they just.
What's wrong about having a horned toad for a friend?
I don't know. Look. This is one of my weirder friends, and I had a lot of weird friends, so I just didn't question it. But so he just liked both of them, and he had to kill one off, and he was actually mad.
I had to walk such a weird tightrope in my Mass Effect playthrough trying to explain how Ashley's racism isn't really that bad, because it's weird trying to explain to the people the concept of this is one of the most reasonable forms of racism portrayed.
Well, the easy way to
fighting a war against the Turians.
Yeah, it was a war for survival. It's like hating the Nazis. Yeah. You're totally justified in hating Nazis.
The humans had been at war with the Turians within that lifetime, and none of them had even seen aliens at the beginning of their lifetime.
I think
and they're currently in a political situation where
killed her dad.
half the other aliens are all racist against humans, and that if any crisis happens, the way
humans are going to be the one to die.
The way she even explains it in a speech at one point where she says look, you can have a dog and you can love your dog, but at the end of the day, your dog's not like your kid or you or something like that. So when a bear attacks, you're going to send your dog at it. And like that's her like like very reasonable explanation of like the race relations in Mass Effect of like why that you could actually see why there's like a humanity first group, for example, like, and like why that's a primary like background struggle throughout Mass Effect 1 is, and why that you have a supposedly racist party member is like because like aliens weren't in your lives this lifetime. And like but everyone on the internet's all like so many people overreact to it as if like she's horrible. I'm like, but it's a lot of people have reasonable.
A lot of people have like never dealt with racism in any kind of like constructive or whatever sense. I know like my middle school was a terrible example of race relations because there were like very clear biases. My brother got beaten up by some kids at a drinking fountain and nothing happened to them because they claimed he was saying racist stuff to them. And it's just like, have you met my brother? He doesn't say shit. Literally, it doesn't say anything.
It's also the issue of like not being one-to-one. Like people talk about like X-Men being a analog to like either racism or homophobia and stuff like that, like those kinds of issues.
Kinda.
But in X-Men, like those characters are in particular the X-Men movies like hammer home that message. Like they try to really heavily attach themselves to that idea.
They have superpowers and people can use them for
That's
evil.
the issue. That's the issue, is that every X-Men movie also happens in some sort of horrible apocalyptic scenario brought on by mutants. And it's like, no, it's actually the people who hate mutants are pretty reasonable in the X-Men universe because of all the things the mutants keep doing.
Though they do paint it like the Sentinels, destroying the world and mutants.
Yeah, the weird part is like the X-Men universe can't figure out if the people that hate mutants are justified or just allegorical Nazis. Because like oftentimes they will just be these like crazy people that will like blow up churches to blame mutants for stuff. And then there are other people that are just like, no, like they're scary. Look, those guys just crashed through a whole building and took it down, and like that's very much not okay.
I mean, X3 has Magneto ripping up the entire like Golden Gate Bridge or something.
Yeah,
it's like that's what think about how like the United States reacts to like 9/11, for example, for like decades. Like how would we react to like what if an literally entire bridge floated somewhere else with people on it? Like that's a gargantuan weird nightmare event.
What if
hasn't there also been instances where mutants have had to put down a fellow mutant because their power was just that destructive?
Yeah, well that's kind of the entire point of Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Xavier's son, Legion.
Legion, great show.
Yeah.
Legion is a pretty neat show.
He was a schizophrenic super mutant that they more or less lobotomize for at least part of the show, and I think he comes back in like a lot of other ways, and then apparently Legion's twin from...
Wait, there's a twin?
There's a plot line where Legion had a twin, and...
just a way to get him back.
No, well, sort of. He had a twin who died before childbirth. Oh, wait, no, it was Xavier's twin that died before, like when they were in childbirth. He sensed that his twin was evil, so he murdered her as a unborn baby, and then she comes back as a psychic ghost and tries to kill everybody.
Man, that's,
oh my god,
that's as messed up as the Wayfarer's Redemption series.
There's weird shit
the babies
in the
were
X-Men
conscious
universe
before birth and wanted to kill their older brother.
Well, when you have people that are being paid to just keep making content infinitely, it's gonna get weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't believe the X-Men movies are gonna try to do Phoenix again.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wait, well they did have her for what
they
we
brought
never saw
back
Apocalypse.
Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones as the new Jean Grey in the reboot version where she's alive again now, and they're gonna immediately do Phoenix again.
But
they should have
that
given
barely
her
worked
at least
in the other
one or two
one.
more
I mean,
movies.
do you know how many times they've done Phoenix in the comic books?
Yeah.
They brought back Phoenix 4 times and gave Phoenix to every X-Men instead of just Jean Grey.
The X-Men continuity is a legit nightmare.
Well, honestly, the comic book universe continuity is crazy pants. Like,
but that's
Iron Man is
normal for
apparently an
comics.
alien.
Like, screwed up continuity is normal for comics. The movies of like generally like superhero movies usually have a really clean continuity until you get to X-Men.
Well,
and then it's a nightmare.
They have a huge cast of characters, which is part of the problem.
Because even before they started time traveling, they already were making Wolverine prequels that contradicted the existing movies, and then they started time traveling, and then they had like time-altering events that take place before other movies where you can't tell which things changed, which gives them free carte blanche to just make up whatever they want for every movie from there on out, basically. Well, in addition, having stuff like Logan, which is not in the continuity at all, and it's like no one knows what's happening anymore. They can just make up a new thing every movie. Also, in these new prequels, every movie takes place a decade later, but every character looks the same age, which is weird. They made the choice to make every movie a decade later, so now like you're supposed to believe the people from First Class are already 20 years older. It's bizarre. But also Phoenix is going to happen twice, but the other time is going to be in a different decade than it was before for different reasons. So like, what is just the same Jean Grey just doomed in every timeline to always become Phoenix, like in like the Time Machine, like by H.G. Wells, where she just keeps dying?
I think they do actually address that in the comic books, that she is actually doomed. Like, as a person, she's screwed. Except for they stole a Jean Grey, a young Jean Grey from an alternate universe and brought her into post-Phoenix world. And apparently that one's maybe safe, but also still has Phoenix.
What's weird is that like they're remaking the idea, but it's got to be worse because like in the original X-Men movie trilogy, Jean Grey was like the third most important character, maybe.
She was sort of like a mother figure to a lot of people.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about like specifically the cast of the X-Men movies, because you have to recontextualize it in forms of like the Wolverine-averse, where Wolverine's the main character now, because that's how the movies work. And like Jean Grey was like one of the most important characters in the original 3 movies. So when you have Phoenix, you're like, oh, this is a big deal because it's Jean Grey. But in the new one, it's like, oh, they did an Apocalypse movie where they introduced Sophie Turner for the first time as being Jean Grey as a minor side character in a show that has like 20, 30 characters. Mm-hmm. And I think the next movie is Phoenix. And it's like, oh no, that character we don't know is going to go evil?
Yeah, that's pretty bad because actually Wander and I were talking about this. We were watching The Next Generation, and I had seen most of the other Star Trek series, but The Next Generation had been like skipped.
Oh, weird. It's like the inverse of what people usually have.
Well, so I grew up with the original series, and while Next Generation would appear very sporadically on television, my father was a big fan of Voyager, so his sister and between his sister and himself, they had like bought all the DVD sets for our family. So I saw all of Voyager. So yeah, Next Generation and DS9, I just didn't have really much exposure to except for the random episode here and there. So, you know, everything's on Netflix now. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go back and watch all the Next Generation. Now, I'm very familiar with the movies. My dad has all the movies, so I knew the Next Generation characters from that. But it was so awkward at the very beginning of the Next Generation because
you kind of didn't know the characters from that, to be honest.
Right. But
in every Next Generation movie, Data has emotions somehow, and Picard's usually Bruce Willising around, running around with like Tommy guns and shirtless, and like yeah, that's totally those characters. That's what they're like for 7 seasons.
So what was really awkward though was so. Obviously, when you're establishing a series, you're trying to get a feel for the characters, what they're all about. But they made the mistake of having one of the first episodes. Maybe it wasn't even that many after the pilot. It may have even been the 3rd or the 4th. I forget particularly which. But they had one of those, everyone on the ship is afflicted with some kind of illness or disease, and suddenly they're acting erratic and not like themselves. And I go, wait a minute, but I didn't
the shirtless
really...
decay episode.
Right, precisely. The naked time. In any case, yeah, they were acting out of whack, but it wasn't obvious at first. What?
Episode 22, The Naked Time.
That was the name of the episode, okay?
That was the name of the episode, Naked Time?
Yes.
Really?
What?
Oh.
Yes.
Yep. I
can't think of
season
naked...
1 was bad.
I can't think
season
of
1
Naked
of the
Time
Next Generation was
Potter
just
Puppet Pals.
terrible.
No. The name of the episode wasn't The Naked Time. The Naked Time was the name of the Sulu episode from the original series.
The Naked Now.
Okay, The Naked Now sounds a little bit less porny.
Oh no, never mind. The Naked Now is a TNG episode 3.
Wait. Oh, it was?
The Enterprise is subjected to an exotic illness that drives them to unusual manic behavior. Episode 3?
Yes. The first season was terrible. It had the naked... I got confused, because there is... In the original series, there's the Naked Time. And in the Next Generation, there's the Naked Now.
But doesn't Next Generation literally open with the two-parter of... the two-parter at Farpoint?
Oh, yeah.
No,
so
bad.
So after the pilot, the first episode was the one where, wow, everyone's acting weird.
Yes.
as if we know who they are.
Right. I had no context of wait, they're starting to act a bit strange, but I didn't know what they acted like in the first place, so...
I watched all of TNG out of order on TV, so I didn't realize how bad it was, but that first season makes no sense.
Well, if you watch Syndicated... If you watch Syndicated The Next Generation, you will almost never see episodes from seasons 1 or 2 because they're so bad.
I saw season 2 episodes because I knew the other Doctor, which is only in season 2. But because that was the weird thing where the Doctor just gets replaced by a different Doctor for one season who also similarly disappears after that season unceremoniously, which sucks. I liked her better than the actual Doctor that's in the whole show.
Crusher? So you liked her more than Crusher.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, the part of the problem is Crusher just ends up being this kind of weird
I love you, Picard,
but we'll never get together, except maybe we will.
Wesley.
Oh,
and then Wesley
Wesley
disappears, and then she's just kind
Wesley's
of not
mom
there.
is on the ship the entire show.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a show that opened with a two-parter where a deity is screwing with you, like Joker, which is already you're not subverting anything because you haven't had a show yet. And then the next episode is, wow, everyone's acting out of order. This is weird. It's you can't, that's a terrible choice for 3 consecutive first episodes.
Maybe they didn't have all the characters figured out at the time, and they were like, oh shit, we gotta make some episodes now. We'll buy some time by making it so everyone's personalities are flipped.
Actually,
that's amazing.
Riker wasn't even a character. He hadn't grown his personality on his face
yet. Here's a funny lore tidbit, guys.
Well put.
This gives me a lot of faith, by the way, in the current show, considering how bad TNG started and then became one of my favorite shows ever.
Oh, I want to... we can continue with that, but I first want to talk about an interesting tidbit about the original series. So they actually had a different pilot with a different captain. It was Captain Pike.
Yeah.
And the lady that ended up being the nurse was actually going to be the second mate. Spock, all the uniforms were completely different. And it dealt with these people with these weird brains and the Orion dancer girl and everything. But I forget if they just had a falling out or if the actor fell down the stairs and became permanently paralyzed. Who was the captain? But that's when they had to, get a new actor. And the first episode that they actually aired was one of my favorites. It was The Changeling, I think. It was the one with it would take the salt. Or was it no, what was the name of the episode? I'm trying to think of it. Maybe it was The Changeling, but it was the thing that would suck salt from people. And it's weird because looking back, I think it's been reordered so that it's episode 8 or something. I forget. It's been so long since I've looked at my dad's VHS section and saw all the titles in order lined up in the bottom shelf of the TV display. But yeah, that was interesting. That had to be completely restructured.
Yeah, he was he was the captain in the pilot, but then
Your
immediately after what?
He just said my dad was the captain in the pilot. Is that what you meant to say?
I did definitely not say my dad.
Keith has dreams of Starfleet.
Can anyone confirm what he just said? Because I heard my dad was the captain in the pilot.
No, I'm assuming that so you're looking up what happened to him. I think he fell down the stairs and got paralyzed.
Well, I watched the show, so I was just talking about it was interesting that he's used in the pilot. And the pilot then surprisingly turns out to be canonical, because it almost seems like it's a scrapped pilot, the way that, now the Enterprise has a completely different cast. That's weird. But then you get to later in the show, and Captain Pike shows up, and he's in that one weird chair with the beeping button and everything like that, because the...
Oh, yep. Right! That's where that came from!
Yeah.
Was it Court Martial?
I only know about it because I originally knew about it because it was referenced in Futurama, where everyone's sitting in this weird chair and they beep to communicate, but none of them actually have to use it. But yeah, Pike has to beep to communicate because he and everyone on his ship were exposed to radiation that just ruined them.
But Spock somehow wasn't with them at the time.
No, it was well after. So what happened is he was the captain of the Enterprise, and then he got transferred, and then he transferred off, and Kirk took over, and then later on, the other ship he was on was suffered from that incident, so it was totally separate. But it was just weird because I was watching it 5 years ago or something. I was watching original series for the first time on Netflix, and I was like, this is a weird pilot. None of the characters I know are in this. I don't know what's happening. and I was like, this was just a pilot, I guess, to prove the concept of Star Trek, I guess. So it was I was really caught by surprise by that reveal of oh, Pike actually is in the show canonically, and he shows up later. Because it's like when you have a really weird cold open in a movie or a show, and then you don't know how it's related to anything else, and then it just doesn't come up for an hour or something, and then it blindsides you by being important later.
Oh yeah, like the opening scene in Sonic Boom.
What? Where it doesn't even matter. It's wrong. It's just straight up actually wrong. Oh,
you remember what I'm talking about, right, Keith?
Oh yeah.
I know you do, Wander, but Keith, you remember what I'm talking about.
Played
Sonic Boom. I was thinking the wrong game.
Yeah, Sonic Boom, where it starts with Sonic and being like, "Oh no," and then it's 2 days earlier.
Well, Sonic dies at the beginning of Sonic Boom. I hate those, by the way. I hate cold opens. Start me fresh, or do not start me with some kind of weird hook.
Let me tell you
that's
this.
not a cold open.
Yeah,
that's not a cold open. Is not the thing where you flash forward to later stuff as a cliffhanger, then go back. No, cold opens are actually usually cooler than that. Because usually a weird scene, and then finding out how it's related. It's usually not the main characters or something like that.
Well, I think the effect, intended effect, is the same as a cold open to make you look ahead and be confused. But this is, it was just shameless and bad as opposed to.
So Keith, you had actually seen some of the new series. I haven't because it requires that we sign up for CBS.
That. I hate that so much.
Why?
It's not a good. It's stupid. That's the thing that is happening.
It's
now.
on Netflix.
It worked for
else,
HBO,
right?
so let's do it with our system now.
Internationally,
the problem
it's available
with the
on Netflix.
idea of Star Trek is that if you like Star Trek, there's a decent chance you don't care about a single other thing on the list of stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exclusive for CBS streaming. But yeah, that Star Trek Discovery is weird, really weird. So it's heavily inspired by the J.J. Abrams movies.
I noticed that the Klingons don't have large manes of hair.
No,
They're
the Klingons
bald.
changed again, which is fine. They always change. The Klingons have never looked the same from season to season in anything, really.
They don't look like weird space Russians. So
they were actually really weird in the original series.
Yeah, the first Klingons were basically just black people that had a couple ridges on their head, and then you get to Worf, where it's oh, this is a whole separate suit now.
Actually, one of the first ones that you see wasn't like that. He was actually the guy that acted as Tremaine in another episode, so he was completely white.
Yeah, there's a few Klingons in the original series that actually are indistinguishable from humans, and you can't even tell they're Klingons.
They had Klingons that looked like Yuri from Red Alert.
It was they were like Khan, where it's I guess he's an alien. I don't know,
but Khan was just a dude.
But I think Khan was an alien too, or something.
Yeah.
Hey, there was even an ambassador that was being used by them, and the only way they were able to determine if he was a Klingon or not was because of the triples.
For me, though, it's the new Klingons are tied with the Abrams Klingons from Into Darkness, in that they're I don't care what they look like, but I hate listening to them talk. Because they have a really forced, awkward, slow dialogue with big giant subtitles with very simple language popping up on the bottom of the screen that they're taking way too long to say. And that was a problem that was specifically a problem for both Into Darkness and the new series Discovery, of just I just don't like every single scene where Klingons are having a conversation, because it's so tedious, because they talk so slowly.
Me am talk now.
Oh god, they're not cavemen.
No.
It's why are you talking so slowly? How do you survive as a culture? Go faster.
I saw a clip of it, and the reason I do the caveman speech is because that's the pacing and whatnot.
It also doesn't sound natural at all.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds really awkward, and some of their voices straight up are like
language.
Some of their voices just sound wrong somehow, which is weird.
Well, I mean, it's a bunch of actors that have been given words. They don't know how to speak Klingon, probably. Like, half of them are probably just given the script and told, yeah, here you go.
No, I mean,
do
like,
one take of like, okay, let's do that line. Keep going.
I just meant that the voices constantly sound like that. How is that voice coming out of that face?
Are they modulating them in some kind of weird way?
They could be modulating them.
They could probably
be modulating dubbing
them
over them, which would be hilarious.
I can't tell, but it's
James
also
Earl Jones, Darth Vader.
It's also got a pilot problem a bit, which is that the show can't really. It's still set, like, we're 4 episodes in already, and it still keeps setting itself up again, basically. Like, you start off on one ship, and that ship is captained by the lead woman from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Michelle Yeoh.
And I'm like, I don't think she's a main cast member of the show. So you're like, oh, this is a temporary first few episodes set up. Which means that, like, first you set up that version of the show, but then that version of the show's gone almost immediately, and then you're setting up a new version of the show as the main character transplants to a new location. So you're like, episode 3 is essentially the actual pilot of the show, while the first 2 episodes are like an origin story for the main character, which already is weird because you're talking about a main character in a Star Trek show, which is very much the case. Like, it has a main character. But
yeah, usually it's like a conglomerate of just like the main bridge crew. They were the cast.
The thing is that stuff will happen to the ship generally, and a cast deals with it. But there's very much like a main character, and
isn't she a human raised by Sarek, who's Spock's father?
Yeah, which is a whole other new issue because like the show can't seem to make sense of what that means necessarily.
That sounds like weird fan
fiction. Is she struggling with her humanity? They always bring that up. Is it like
you could argue that her lack of identity is the theme of the show or something like that, maybe, because that's like sure, but like it is really weird to constantly bring up that she's like a human raised with Klingons, because constantly it's like
Vulcans.
There's
right?
Yeah, Vulcans, right?
Oh, dude, a human raised by Klingons would be hilarious.
A Vulcan would be like, what's the difference?
Actually, Worf was a Klingon raised by humans.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's interesting.
But like, she has almost no Vulcan traits, really. Like, they have a flashback that shows her coming straight there from being with the Vulcans. So it's like, oh, she's all restrained and has the weird hair and everything like that. But like, outside of that flashback, she just seems like exactly as human as everybody else. Because, like, it's hard to tell the difference between a human raised by Vulcans and just humans that are scientists, which is literally everyone in the Federation that you meet, usually. So, like, it's like, I don't know how they can delineate that to make it feel different. But, it's actually an enjoyable show, aside from the part where you remember it's supposed to be Star Trek. Like, it's a space drama. And it's a fun space drama that's ridiculously well shot. Like, it's beautiful at all times. Like, it looks better than the J.J. Abrams movies that I'm sure are more expensive, because it's so well shot, but also it's not constantly trying to do this action movie all the time. So like, it has time to breathe and linger in these locations, and its CG is even shockingly good for a television show.
That's something that always bugged me about The Next Generation. It was a show with a lot of really good ideas that came 20 years too early
in this like stiff sitcom looking set.
Yeah. Like, I felt like the cast of some like, I don't know, family show is gonna just like bump it, like you could see them in the background trying to like hustle off and it's like
a lot of it was actually made out of foam, It
was such a cheap set and such a cheap show.
The doors that had to be manually opened and closed by extras off camera.
Yep.
Yeah,
they'd be hiding in the walls.
Like, if you just want a sci-fi drama of people on a ship, like, it's actually generally good. It's got an entire cast of good actors, and it looks great, and everyone's doing a good job, except for maybe the writers. Where like, it's hard to judge this early, but like, there's definitely senses of like of it being like a really heavy-handed, awkwardly handled, like season-wide plotline thing. And there's an issue of like, there was a really good showrunner that was on the project and then left, but he outlined the project for like 3 seasons.
Now,
and he was going to be
following? Sorry.
Well, it's like he was going to be the director of the whole show, and then just left at some point after having. But he set up the framework for 3 seasons, so they have the framework to work with, but they have to do all the in between stuff. So it becomes this like Game of Thrones problem where like George R.R. Martin made these books that resonated with a bunch of people, and when they do the stuff from the books, it works really well. But in the recent seasons of Game of Thrones, they're going past the books and they're only working with the framework of what's supposed to happen and nothing else. And they have to do the dialogue and fill in all the details themselves, and that's where all the weak points are showing. That's what's happening with Star Trek right now. Is that like somebody seems to have had a good plan for the show, and the parts that like the big notes all seem to be working just fine, but all the details in between feel like somebody else had to handle them because that's what happened.
Are they following an episodic format, or are they really just going, like, there's one goal, one direction, and every episode just further...
4 episodes in so far, the show is very much a modern American drama, and that this season is a storyline, as opposed to Star Trek episodic stuff.
So they're not going to be arriving on a planet every single episode and solving its issues?
They might eventually, but they're definitely not for the first 4 episodes. It's all set up and story arcs, and the idea that they have supposedly like plans for the first 3 seasons suggests that it'll always be that way. It'll probably never be a Monster of the Week show. But we'll see. It'll be its own thing.
We have about
only I could see
20 minutes. Do we have any questions by any chance?
I just wanted to... Can I talk about one game that isn't Persona 5? Because... kind of didn't get to talk about the one game that I want to talk about.
I don't think I talked about that. Oh, wait, I talked about Cuphead because you got to talk about
Cuphead. I wanted to talk about Elex for a second. I just wanted to show you guys this. Because this is something I've been running into lately, where technology is actually surpassing.
Why are you showing me a poop?
So Elex is the latest and greatest double A wannabe Dragon Age game, and it's actually
Dragon Age.
Yeah,
Wait, does it have dialogue?
I would say it's a wannabe. It's wannabe. It's Dragon
one of the many AA RPGs made in the aftermath of a post BioWare world.
So it's like Path of Fire.
Where like there's a
Bound by Flame.
Bound by Flame.
Yeah, like there's a video game template for how to make a BioWare Western RPG, and a lot of AA developers have been following it religiously for like the last 10 years.
Yeah, so it's open world with factions, and your choices matter, and this weird potato man that I just shared with you guys actually tells you, it says, Duras will remember this. He's like saying, yeah.
No.
It's very much just like, you like Dragon Age, right? Or like a BioWare game, right? Okay, yeah, this is gonna be nice and similar. And it's odd. And I think I like it mostly ironically, not because it's necessarily good. The combat's awkward and the people look really weird, and the main character is like the quintessential deep voiced, dark and broody.
Not this guy, though. He's not this guy.
No, not this guy. That's the potato man, the first guy you actually talk to in the game.
Doesn't he take your armor?
He's one of your companion characters.
Oh.
Yeah.
What did the woman look like in this universe?
Fairly reasonable, but I haven't gotten close enough to any of them to actually tell you.
I was going to compare him to Commander Shepard at first, but he really looks like some sort of weird, like, default character generator man. Like the main character in this game.
As far as I can tell, whoever they hired...
His hairline's a little low.
He's just nondescript bald man.
Yeah.
Oh.
Whoever they picked up for their like art team really clearly loves sci-fi equipment and armor and weapons in general. They're not so interested in people. And I was finding myself really disappointed that they didn't just make everybody robot men. Because if they had just gone with the everybody's a robot man, don't question it route, the game would have actually looked really nice. Because, like, the armor that Potato Man there is wearing looks really cool. Like, it looks like something out of Game of Thrones.
Their armor is really awesome.
Yeah, and the sci-fi stuff looks pretty good, kind of Mass Effect-y and so on and so forth. But the people, No, and they don't have lip syncing, so it's the old like blah 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 talking style. But the thing is, like, they kind of have an emotion based like emotion animation, so it's like this character is probably happy. Let's curl his mouth up a little bit, so he's got like
default Oblivion style facial animations.
I was like, it's like if you took Oblivion and remade it faithfully with modern tech. And changing nothing.
For context, this developer is Piranha Bytes, the developer that made all 3 Gothic and all 3 Risen games.
Yeah.
So I guess like, Elex must be their new trilogy that they'll do.
Yeah, it's their new thing they're working on, and they're probably going for it. And honestly, like looking at it, if you like Gothic, you're probably going to like it. But I can't help but make fun of everything that happens. You get a jetpack, which actually is kind of a nice thing, and you can kind of fly up. So like. You're not
apparently
just
their
to
entire company has
buildings.
25 employees.
Wow.
What? Wow.
Good for them. I mean, it seems like an okay game for that small of a team. But like you get a jetpack, which is neat enough, and you can use it to like get up places and explore, which is appreciated. But the character's animations, whenever he's jetpacking, is effectively T-posed. He's flying through the sky, and it looks like he doesn't give a shit. Like, he doesn't even, like, pose. He doesn't superhero. He's just standing there waiting to get through, waiting for gravity or his jetpack to be done. Are his legs at least
waggling in the wind?
Not really. No. I, like, fell off a cliff at one point, and the character just went to default standing pose until he landed.
Oh, no.
It was magic. I was just like, he looks like he just doesn't like anything, and he's just waiting for it to be done so he can go back to doing whatever. And
just wily coyoting. He just thinks he's on the floor.
It's pretty funny. And like the combat's okay. It kind of does the Dark Souls thing where you have like a stamina meter and you have heavy attacks and light attacks, and apparently you can combo them together to do like an extra special attack, but it's kind of clearly not mocapped at all. So the character just like mechanically steps forward and just starts like wailing on a guy really strangely, and I'm just like, This is what happens when technology kind of outpaces a developer, where like they can make a really nice looking game, but the moment it needs to move, it suddenly gets really questionable because people have like really high standards now. You know, Uncharted, for example, going from like watching Uncharted to even Mass Effect Andromeda was a horror show, and the idea of like going even further down from my face is tired is a bit disconcerting. I actually kind of feel bad for these guys because this game would have been maybe fantastic a couple years ago, and now it's just like, that's a weird looking person, man.
Well, a few years ago they couldn't have made it.
Yeah, no, that's always true.
Like for developers like this, they're getting that far because it's getting so much easier to get that far. That's becoming something that a smaller team can handle without having a 600 like.
That's called leapfrogging.
Like, if you look at those graphics, compare those graphics to Resident Evil 6, a game that had 600 people working on it. Think about that. That's how things have progressed. Now a team that is 1/24th the size can do it.
Yeah, they might not have even had that many people modeling and animating for this.
No,
if it's
only a 25-man studio, like I'm actually kind of impressed
a lot of
now.
This is just bought off the asset store.
No, maybe. The characters and the weapons look unique.
No, I'm sure that like a lot of the main pieces are, but like all of the like fluff, like
you're right. The environment,
a log pile, that's definitely bought off an asset store.
I could see that.
Maybe cheap. Have you ever looked at how cheap assets are? You can get like 100 3D models of just like filler shit for like $20.
Part of me just feels like if you made 2 RPG trilogies already and you're published by THQ Nordic, you're probably making your own assets at that point.
It's hard to say. I
wouldn't be surprised.
THQ Nordic, I wouldn't say is really like a determination for quality. They're kind of like Daedalic, where it's a grab bag. They're just a publisher because they're the only one available in that area, or kind of that school of thought. Like Battle Chasers is also THQ Nordic, and that game is like just hundreds of times higher quality because of how independent they are from THQ Nordic. Which is probably for the best, because I don't know. I think THQ Nordic kind of learned from, previous THQ, and they're like, okay, we're just going to be really hands-off this time around, and we'll just kind of handle the publishing instead of, like, actually allocating much money to anywhere.
I would give it a chance. I think you should just,
I'm going to give it a chance.
See what the plot is like and everything, because I know that people are saying that after I finished my Myst series that I should go back and play Planescape Torment. And I'm like, that looks really old, but I suppose
I'm going to give it a chance until I hit some kind of wall where I say, this is really boring or frustrating, because that's usually what happens. I play a game until I'm like,
I'm almost done with Vaporum.
Yeah. Well, they patched it to make it a lot better, but at this point, I'm just kind of like, I got other things to play.
As far as I can tell, I'm not getting any patches, because I still can't use notes on the map.
Wow.
Which everyone else claims works, and I think when I log in, it tells me that I'm using a review copy still, and I think I might.
Oh yeah.
I might be playing like a pre 1.0 version.
Oh, interesting.
Huh. Because that's a good point.
I saw on the forums there was a post about how they rebalanced how a few different systems work. Like, in particular, somebody was min-maxing and realized that, like, if the healing gives you a specific amount, like, you get a life leech item in the game, and the life leech gives you a specific numeric value of life leech instead of percentage. So they realized that what they should do when they're trying to heal with it is they should take their armor off, then heal with it, then put their armor back on, because your armor maintains your current health percentage, which means that that means that healing is more effective when you have less health overall, and then you can put your armor back up and you'll go back to your higher max health, but it maintains the same percent health. So if you have a flat health, if you have a flat number healing value, you want to use that when you have less health, technically, and then buff yourself back up to having a lot of health after you've healed. And so they realized that weird loophole that's like an incentive structure that sort of incentivizes people to go into these bad loops of doing really unfun gameplay because it technically makes you better off. So they patched it to have to add a specific percentage element to it and a limiter to it, so it wouldn't be incentivizing people to do that. And that's never shown up in my game.
Yeah, I could see that, because I have the the forced press version of Dungeons 3, and I don't get the day one patch.
It's weird.
I'll have to bug them about it.
Yeah,
it's not a big deal.
I honestly never struggled with the game, though. I'm playing on normal difficulty, and I'm all the way up to the last floor now, and there was no real, like, stopping blocks.
I just hit a point, maybe I was inefficient due to lack of experience, but I was on, like, the easiest difficulty out of healing items at 50 HP, and I was like, I literally can't progress in this game. This is no longer fun.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to damage mitigation, like just how much can you deal with the combat and avoiding damage.
I just
damage
don't like that
like
combat system. It is so clunky. Like, I could see why that sort of thing would be really fun, but in the age of shit like Dark Souls, Elex, and I just like billions of other better options, action combat a la weird square dancing is just...
I got a kick out of it because they took the Grimrock formula sort of, and the biggest way that they diverted from it was by having a bunch of like area of effect attacks. You'll have enemies that attack in a line and enemies that attack all their adjacent squares, or like certain bosses where like they'll do a slam where the box in front of them and the ones to the direct left and right of the front of them, like in a line, will be the ones that get hit. So evading around patterns and then also using your gadgets that also attack in patterns becomes like the entire game, and that started to get really zen, like doing these evasion patterns and positioning yourself like in like at times like intentionally surrounding yourself but with an escape path so that you could specifically do AoE attacks that would hit everybody at once, and then responding by like luring people down hallways to do line-based attacks that go through people and stuff like that. Like, there was a lot of like fun things that are not opportunities that came up in Grimrock as much, where that was mostly a single target game.
Oh yeah, because the enemies would group up.
Not only would they group up, but just pretty much everybody was using like single target attacks, both you and your enemies most of the time.
So, do we want to quickly do a question or three?
Colonel RPG asks, how do you feel about made-up languages in fiction, games, books, movies, and do you know any, even partially? Which one's your favorite, even if you don't know them?
I learned all of
question is
Tolkienian
from June.
Dwarvish in elementary school. That was weird.
I feel like Tolkien did it right, or did it really, really well, and everybody else who does it doesn't feel as good.
It depends. If it's just one for one, I never like it when it's spoken. It almost always feels just really awkward because, we've been speaking. It's like whenever you're trying to speak like what languages did you guys take in high school? Keith, you took German. How fluid was your German by the end of it?
Not
barely. Not there we go.
My Spanish.
You do not get fluent anything from high school.
Well, I said fluid, not fluent. Like I can understand Spanish really well.
What does fluid mean?
It means like if you speak it, you sound like you're not like
you're not stopping to think.
You might still have an accent, but you don't sound halting and awkward.
I mean,
think of it as the opposite of an Italian guy
because I don't speak German.
Think of it as the opposite of an Italian guy being like, "Oh yeah, my mom, she makes a good like hasta pazul or something."
I would
and
have
just
to
like
have
switch from American into Italian.
I would have to talk to a German in German to know, and they'd have to ask them.
Because like
that's the only way to know.
I took years of Spanish and I couldn't smoothly switch back and forth between, and I couldn't have a good conversation in Spanish either because I don't know the words. They're not.
My vocabulary is so rusty. I can remember a lot of like the tenses and how you're supposed to change the verbs, but then
even back like during school, none of us were ever particularly good masters of it. And so when you have a fake language in a video game, nobody knows the language except for the people that made it, and even then, they're not the ones speaking it. So you hand voice actors who might not even know what game or setting they're in, and they suddenly have to voice act this thing, maybe with like small amounts of voice direction.
Elven language is immensely pretty, though, when you hear it.
It is pretty, and they did a really great job of it because it's like a real language, and they got really great actors, and they put a lot of love into it.
Yeah, whereas like
Albed
it almost
exists.
Yeah, exactly. Like it usually just ends up sounding like Pig Latin gibberish.
What was the Albed?
It was the Final
Fantasy one?
Albed was bullshit because weren't you literally replacing letters with other letters? Like it was like
a cipher of English.
Yeah, it was like some sort of like rotation 16 language or something. Like it wasn't a real language.
Now they also have like the language of the Fremen in Dune, right?
Yeah, but like in a lot of these cases, like Lord of the Rings, it's because somebody sat down for years and developed these languages.
Well, Tolkien was a linguist.
Yeah, like part of the reason why I was able to learn Tolkienian Dwarvish as an elementary schooler.
Dwarvish? You chose Dwarvish.
Yeah.
It's like,
He's always had an affinity with the dwarves.
I know.
Well, no, I had shitty handwriting in elementary school. Dwarvish is a very like blocky.
You mean the written language?
Yeah, no, I didn't learn spoken. God, that'd be impossible.
Dwarvish.
But I could have technically learned how to speak it because it was fairly phonetic. It's like Korean, because Korean was a manufactured language. They more or less sat down and were like, okay, we need a language that's going to be really easy for people to pick up.
Yeah, because
and so
unfortunately,
you could technically learn the basics of Korean.
Cuneiform and Japanese kanji and everything. It gets really confusing. Typewriters can't handle it.
Apparently, you can learn the basics of Korean in an afternoon. All it is after that is like mastering it. And that was true for
like
Tolkien and Dwarvish because he knew what he was doing. And most people that make languages, they're just trying to come up with something that sounds believable. Long enough that nobody's going to question it, that's it.
I can
like
write
a prop
pretty
book
much.
In a movie.
Yeah,
I can write almost as swiftly in the Star Wars Arabesh as I can in English, but I mean, you can actually probably read it because I'm not like my English handwriting looks like a lot of scribbles.
Yeah,
it's pretty bad.
Her English handwriting.
It's just your handwriting, right?
No. Her Arabish handwriting is reasonable.
Essentially, if I have to take the time to carefully make symbols, then but it's sort of like, imagine if cursive and what's our blockier form of English written like
whatever default.
Okay, fine.
Default.
it's sort of like a half between cursive and not, but then also incredibly fast, so that it's
called
looks
printing.
a little bit scritchy.
Oh yeah, print.
It's just print.
Haven't you ever heard the phrase "print your name"?
No, it's true.
Okay.
So
No, Shell carries in a printer for that specific section.
But Arabesh is one of those things where it's just one symbol equals one letter, so you're not really getting a language out of it.
Start dot matrix printing your name.
Those things are awful sounding.
I mean, I've also memorized. Well, I mean, you probably want to do this if you play the Myst games, but I've memorized all of the numbers, like the number system for it, so it comes in handy.
Which you literally can learn in like an actual like school
Puzzles.
room. Like you go to an actual classroom that is currently abandoned and use the learning tools that they used on their children to learn the number system.
Yeah, I remember that puzzle. That puzzle was awesome.
The funny thing is, they don't actually teach you how to go into the like 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s until later games. But the thing is, it would take so long. In Revelation, they actually go into the written text, but they actually have separate symbols for sh and ch and th and a couple other vowel combinations and stuff. But the Dini language itself is so very different that, yeah, they probably don't have an established vocabulary to like an immense extent. They probably just have a couple phrases and sentences that they use for one thing or another. Yeah.
I've never had any particular interest in fictional languages, so I'm just going to say parcel tongue.
Is there anything to parcel tongue?
I don't think anyone ever made a language for it.
Yeah.
But they had
J.K. Rowling was way too focused on snogging.
But when they got to the movies, somebody had to say something when it was parcel tongue time. So
I assume that the parcel tongue was literally just like not Chewbacca, like Jabba the Hutt noises, like
he's so wanted jumbo.
I don't want to
so high. Jabba the Hutt parcel tongue. Not a direction I thought this podcast would take, but I'm proud of it.
The orc language probably sounds a lot like Klingon, doesn't it?
I think Jabba the Hutt was just them recording George Lucas at McDonald's.
Playing it backwards.
I was going to say in the bathroom.
And then playing it backwards. Yeah, and slowed down.
It's like, hang on.
Well, that would be Hutties, as they would refer to it as.
Yeah, they just put a hidden mic in the bathroom. Yeah. All of the recordings are just people pooping and like the shit they're saying.
Or they just like slow it down and play it backwards. Oh god, I'll never be able to hear Jabba the Hutt the same ever again.
That's okay. I mean, he's a giant turd anyway.
Yeah.
Or slugs.
One last question?
No, 2 hours, bro. We're done.
Yeah. We are done.
Finally.
Yeah,
God damn.
So I like
we got through one
Elvish
question.
For the sound.
Yeah.
Denis
Do we have enough for a question podcast? Because we could always do that at like 45 or something.
For the symbols. Yeah.
There's like 12 questions in the backlog.
Whatever. Someday.
And like a lot of them, when I go through them, some of them are like, oh, never mind, and I just drag it away because like some of them are not really a thing to go into.
Like, is it topics that we wouldn't want to touch?
Or they're just bad, or play scrap mechanic.
Some of them are just nonsensical, or they ask a question that we've already answered, or...
Mm-hmm.
Are the nonsensical ones the, what would you do in this situation?
How many times do we get questions about YouTube drama?
No.
That's good. Because
I don't think we do, but now we will.
Like, what do you think of the latest hee-hee video, or something? Don't ever ask us a question like that.
Truth.
Even though we do talk about YouTube drama on this podcast.
Not the same. We talk about other
We talk about YouTube controversy, actually, not interpersonal YouTube drama between channels we've never heard of that are mad, I guess.
Yeah.
But also, wouldn't you want to avoid talking about things like that in the instance one of them notices you and then... I don't know.
It's not even that. You want to avoid talking about it because
it's literally a giant outrage machine where everybody just profits off of yelling at each other.
Yeah.
And there's just an audience that likes watching the drama, and they act like one side won or lost, but really everybody's just profiting.
Yeah, it's like the Mayweather fight thing.
Yeah,
I guess.
I don't know what that is.
Like, the loser of the fight still walks away with like $30 million. So
yeah.
What?
Yeah,
Gloriously
Mayweather
wealthy.
versus
Oh, you're talking about the
McGregor
wrestlers or the
Yeah.
boxers.
Yeah, that was like a huge thing, and like afterwards, they're both just like walking.
I mean,
Pictures of them on Instagram. with
wrestlers
lots of
are
money.
almost a more valid comparison than Mayweather, because it's like those are people who are actually like just straight up faking it, and all the drama is like manufactured and written and directed and stuff like that. That's not that far off of how a lot of drama on YouTube kind of works, honestly.
Oh yeah,
It's just a bunch of bullshit feuds, just like rappers did for 30 years, and
I remember
everyone makes money off of it.
flipping on the TV, and it would be some woman would start a cat fight at one of the wrestling rings, and then their boyfriends would have to come in and duke it out, and they were all like big name wrestlers, and then they were smashing chairs on one another's backs.
I mean, that's every episode.
Yeah. Anyway, so send us questions about Keemstar and Hee, and I will gladly answer them.
Yeah, send us
podcast
questions,
talking about-
title them Drama Alert, and I will be sure to filter that.
Yeah,
so that it
Bird's
never
answers
reaches
will
us.
be who and why do I care? And please stop asking me questions.
That'd be a great podcast.
It would be.
At us trying to answer drama questions about YouTube channels we've never heard of.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this name comes before that one alphabetically, so I guess they win.
Alrighty.
See you guys next time.
See you.